Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Evangelist Nick Garrett channel, Truth First Christianity, separating the objective and factual from the subjective and traditional for the benefit of our faith. Learn more about narrative apologetics at evangelistnickgarrett.com. Visit us across the platforms at EvangelistNickG. Today I'm raising a question about biblical inerrancy. I want to tell you what I discovered, and I'm going to continue to research this and maybe make a more complete video later, but I wanted to get everybody's thoughts and share what I had found so far. In the book of Romans, there's usually no question among scholars that Paul wrote the book of Romans. But if you read the end of the book of Romans, in verse 21, 22, 23, chapter 16, 22 says, I, Tertius, who wrote this epistle, greet you in the Lord. That's pretty staggering when you think about it. And you say, wait, I thought Paul wrote this. And you go back to the beginning and you see Paul, a bondservant of Jesus, and you realize it's not in the first person. He's not saying, I, Paul. Oh no, there's a problem with the book. No, there's no problem with the book, right? You see, Tertius was acting as what was called back then an amanuensis, essentially a scribe. He is writing Paul's letters or taking Paul's letters and kind of writing at the end, hey guys, we read this in our church and we're forwarding it to yours. An important point to be made here regarding the epistles. The letter to the Galatians, for example. Well, Galatia is a region, not just one city in this case, right? So usually what would happen is a letter, an epistle to a church didn't just go to one building. Maybe it went to 20 churches, 20 groups of people comprised the church of Galatia, right? Or the church of Rome, or the church of Philippi, or Thessalonica. Or Iconium, or Caesarea, right? There were various groups of Christians that comprised the church under that title. So it doesn't bother me that Paul might use an amanuensis. Let's create a distinction here, though. When you read Corinthians at the end, Paul writes in the first person, hey, I, Paul, am taking the time to write this to you myself. One thing, it creates a distinction where Paul is saying, hey, I'm writing this myself. And that creates the idea that, well, what would the opposite be? He's not writing it himself. Oh, well, in the case of Romans, we see someone else writing it for Paul as an amanuensis. Cool, it's safe. And in Corinthians, the second group of letters, the 2 Corinthians, Paul at the end says, hey, you see, I'm writing this real big to you myself. And then you see other epistles where you think maybe an amanuensis was used, right? A scribe who's passing on the words of Paul. Fine. Doesn't call into question for me the veracity of these books, but it does raise the question about biblical inerrancy and why the 100 other epistles from the time period can't be looked at with the same scrutiny. There are 3 biblical doctrines regarding Scripture, the text of Scripture: inspiration, inerrancy, and infallibility. We believe that God's words are theopneustos. God breathed out, right? God breathed out these words. In the beginning was the Word. The Word was God. The Word was with God. The Word made flesh in Jesus Christ. So this grouping of books, right? Anywhere from 66 to 83, depending on what your orthodoxy is and where you are in the world, right? It's not just 66 books for everybody in the world. You should know that. But it creates the question for me, well, why can't I look at the gospel of, or the epistles of Clement or the gospel of Barnabas with the same scrutiny as I would Romans? Doesn't mean to me that these aren't inspired. Doesn't mean to me that the idea that the words of God would be infallible. But the idea of biblical inerrancy, error-free transmission, maybe from God to man, but does that hold from man to man? Is biblical inerrancy more important in the 3rd century, 4th century, when the Bible's being canonized for the first time? Or did it have to do with the transmission of God's words to Paul? Now they're going through Tertius, or whoever else the amanuensis is at the time. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to do more videos on this. It's a very interesting subject to me, and I want to look more into it, but I wanted to get some preliminary thoughts going, see what you guys thought, add your ideas. It's a great discussion to be having. As you know, this channel is not a stranger to exploring the ideas around biblical inerrancy, and we'll see what we can find out, right? If you want to support our work on our channel, you can via PayPal. We also have a Cashapp and a Venmo. If you feel so compelled, you can support us by buying one of the books I've written from the Just Tell Me the Truth About Christianity series. You could get a novelty item like a shirt or cup from the Teespring store. Anything you could do would be appreciated. If you're considering financial support for this channel, I ask that you say a few prayers, and if you feel so compelled to give whatever gift you can. I thank you for it. God bless you, and may your work today bear fruit. Thanks. It's gonna